Welcome back to the Ginge Treasure. Today we're gonna do a Amazonite, and normally I do the awkward shaped, how to wire wrap awkward shapes. This one is pretty legit cube, and so it would be fairly simple, but nonetheless the style of wrapping that I'll do today will be relevant for even if it were an awkward shape with non-symmetrical sizes. And so we're going to start off with the 20 gauge wire, and this is about half an arm's length. Really I'm kind of eyeballing it from the size. So for the circumference, let's see, so that's 1, 2, about 2.5 the length of the circumference of the surface area. And for the 24 gauge wire, I just kind of the same thing, eyeballing about an arm's length. Doesn't necessarily have to be exact, but what's more important is that you do kind of an overestimate rather than an underestimate. And then for people beginning wire wrapping, that's how I recommend it. It doesn't make sense in the idea of like, well, you want to be conservative with the amount of wire that you're using, but really I promise, until you get the experience and learn how to just eyeball it, which is kind of takes years of practice, you really want to overestimate, and otherwise you'll end up not having enough wire, and that is more costly than overestimating by a little bit. So as you saw, kind of as I was doing that explanation, what I did is I found the middle of the 24 gauge wire by kissing these 2 points together and then sliding all the way to find that middle point. And that middle point, I just went ahead and did one wrap, one band around, and just kind of placing it. It's loose, it slides, but just kind of generally placing it to what would appear to be the middle point. So if I were to kiss these 2 points and find the middle, it's gonna be about there. And so to start us off, what I'm gonna do is pinch down with my index finger and my thumb on both the 24 gauge and the 20 gauge wires, and just kind of to hold it in place. And then with my index finger of my left hand, because I'm a lefty, it could be opposite for you in the sense where it would look like this. But for me, it's just more comfortable to work at it like this because I'm a lefty. And so with my middle finger and my thumb, I'm pulling tight on this wire. And then with the index finger, I just kind of use that as a guide. And just make the rounds one by one, going slow. And by the way, I do have some brunch cooking in the toaster oven right now, so I might have to put this video on pause. I can smell that it's getting about ready to be flipped. Doing some breakfast burritos. Well, they're not really breakfast burritos because that implies eggs, but I'm doing burritos for breakfast. Fun little fact. All right, and from here, I'm just gonna pause real quick. I'll be right back. And we're back. Yep, got those Ritos flipped. Let's get back into it. So from this point, what I'm doing is eyeballing the length. What I want to get is, so right now the amount of bands is slightly less than the length of this bottom area right here. And I want it slightly more, just enough so that I can wrap around those curves. So what I'm gonna do is flip the wire around so that we were wrapping from the middle out this way. Now we're gonna start wrapping out this way. And it's gonna look more or less the same. The only reason I flipped it around is to kind of keep the length of the 24 gauge wires symmetrical, because towards the end, that will be important. Or maybe not so important if you do an overestimate, which I have a feeling I'll probably end up clipping some of this wire in the end anyways. But if not, then it's good to have the wire lengths symmetrical. So I'm just wrapping and wrapping, and then so right about here was the middle. So I think that's enough. In fact, I might have even gone overboard a little bit. No, it looks good. It looks good right where it is. So what I'm gonna do from here is with my finger, just kind of bend and anticipate that curve of where the crystal will curve. And then as well, what I did here, I call it the longhorns. I'll do it here as well, so you'll see why I call it the longhorns. So I bend these wires outwards, and that's just so that they don't bend into each other and create a little bit of a difficulty for me while I'm continuing the wrap. So from there, I just tuck the crystal in, and it's pretty thick on the side length. So if that's the case, what I will do is when I swing this wire, I'm gonna swing it across from this side to this side. And to compensate for that the thickness on the side, on the edge, because it's relatively thick on the whole way through. What I will do is pinch down on my fingers, so this is where the wire ends, and then you can see my finger is a little bit higher than that. So I pinch down, and then I start wrapping. And that way, you'll see now when I slide this down, there's gonna be a little bit of a thickness to the wire. It doesn't go tightly across, it's like at an arc. And then I'll do the same thing for the other side as well. And that is in order to compensate the thickness of the flat edge. So let's see how I did. I'll slide this one down too. And I did not do enough, unfortunately. But that's okay. I'm just gonna unwrap it. And then it's pretty delicate here. Generally, you don't want to do this, but I'll show you just for the sake of when you need to correct the mistakes. Just carefully flatten out and massage the wire as best you can without touching it or pulling on it too much, because once the wire gets bent a little bit, it does become weaker, and if you mess with it enough, it could actually snap. So we want to avoid that. And I'm just clamping down, trying to do my best to keep it flat and eliminate as many of those ridges as possible. So now, trying again, I'm gonna put my fingers up even higher. We'll start from here, way up, almost at the top. And then we'll slide it down and see how it's much more open, much more room for my stone to fit in. And it's still actually not quite there, so what I'm gonna do is unwrap the other side as well. And then the same thing, just kind of using the flat part of the pliers, clamp down and massage the kinks out. All right, looks pretty good. And the same thing, we're gonna reach up way high. So you see how the bands, they end wrapping there, and there's this whole gap. All right, and then let's see from there how we did. It might actually be too much, but honestly, too much is a lot easier to fix than not enough. In fact, there's not really, aside from what I just showed you, not really any way to fix if there's not enough. So we're gonna continue. It is a little bit loose, but there will be a little style technique that I'll show you how to resolve that towards the end, so I'm not so worried about that. What I'm doing right now is there's the 20 gauge wire, which is wrapped, and then the 24 gauge wire, which is going across. My thumb is just kind of pinching down on both of those wires, holding them in place, using the stone to hold it in place, while my other hand, the fingers, are doing the twisting. And right about there, it looks to be more or less halfway the length here. So halfway there and then the full length there. And that looks good, so I'm gonna switch over to the other side and do the same thing, get my fingers in place. My middle finger is also on the other side, kind of between the 20 gauge wrapped wire and then the 24 gauge wire. And then I'm just gonna get it caught up so it's symmetrically aligned with the other side. And I'm actually gonna do another quick little break here and go get my burrito, take it out of the toaster oven. And once again, I'm back. And the burritos are looking good. In fact, they were so good that I kind of jokingly thought to myself, like, what if I did a tutorial video for how to toaster oven pre-made, pre-wrapped burritos? That would be hilarious, but you know what? Don't knock it till you try it, I guess. People make some crazy how-to videos. So what I'm doing here, I just, from that middle point, I swung the 24 gauge wire across again, and I'm gonna continue wrapping, and I'll do one more wrap across before we get to the tippy top. So maybe like right about there on that side. I would do a little bit higher, except for that this curve is kind of unique in the sense that it's a wide curve, so the curving really starts right aligned with where that last band is wrapped. And then I'll swing it around and then do the same thing with the other side. 24 gauge wire goes across and then starts wrapping around to the other side. And here I can get away with going a little bit higher because that curve is kind of like an acute angle or not such a wide curve. Right there, about right there is where I'm comfortable with it. And then from there I'm gonna do the final swings across. Yep, I'm gonna have a lot of extra wire this time around, but like I said, that's okay. Better than not enough. And it's come together, it's looking pretty cute, right? Definitely something worthy of showing off to your friends or loved ones. Sometimes when these bands are not tight enough, you'll notice that when I swing around, I'll actually go back and forth, and it's kind of like same principle as one of those unique wrenches that I forget the name of it, but there's a specific type of wrench that can tighten it just by words, forgetting the words for it. And then so from here at the top, what I'm doing is just continuing to wrap upwards with the intention that at the appropriate time, maybe a few more on each side, then I'm gonna have these wires bend and fold over each other. When I get to that point, I'll show you what I mean. But for now, I'm just kind of eyeballing the length approximately from this last wrap to here is approximately where I want to be in the middle here. The middle of the top. And that looks to be about it for me for there. Switch over to the other side. Doing the best to keep it symmetrical because symmetry in art is a beautiful thing. Aesthetically pleasing to the eyes. I think right about there. So then we're going to cross these over. And then from here, I'm going to take this wire and cross it through, underneath, and around both of the 20 gauge wires. And I'm gonna do it in this gap right here. So not underneath this wire, but over the top. What I mean is that, over the top, not underneath, right? So over the top and then under both of the 20 gauge wires. Pull it tight. It's kind of holding them in place. Now I flip it around and then do the same thing. Over and under. Looking nice. And then just kind of pull them tight. And I'm tempted to do just one more of each because there's that little gap there, and I could, but I'm gonna choose not to this time. And then from here, we'll bend these wires up, and I'm kind of eyeballing the length that I'll need is, so these fingers, the roundness of the finger there is what I use to measure out the width of the neck lace hole. And I like to do 2 wraps. So what I do is just kind of eyeballing the length. So what is that? That's about 2 digits on the finger. And from here we clamp down on the flat part, create this L, and then from the L we will wrap backwards. So it's kind of like you're shaping this question mark almost, and then you continue with that flow. So then it kind of ends like almost like a capital Q. And then you just keep wrapping. And you want to make sure that your wraps are not overlapping. So it's 3 aligned instead of 2 crisscrossing and then 1 on the outside or something. And then from there, we point the Q-tip downwards, and then we take the 20 gauge wire and wrap it. We pull the 24 gauge wires just down and out of the way for now. And then we start wrapping the 20 gauge wire around, and I can see where it's kind of tightened that, and I'll just fix that by kind of re-widening with the pliers fingers. Keep that hole open and nice. And then continuing to wrap downwards with that 20 gauge wire. And then when I get towards the end, so there's the tip right there, I'll just pinch with the tip of the pliers and then curl it inwards so that it's not poking out. And then from here, I'll take the 24 gauge wires and just go over the wrap that I just did with the 20 gauge. Since I have a little extra, I'll go work my way down to the bottom. And then once I get close enough to the bottom, I want to, or to the end of the wires, I want to make sure that my wrap is towards the bottom so that I can clip off the excess. And then with the last little tips, same thing, just curl them and tuck them under so that they're not poking out. So that's one, and then we'll do the same thing with the last tip here. Curl it, and then tuck it. Good night. So I did promise that I'll show you a little style trick for if these wires are loose. Is just pinch down in the middle and twist, and you get this kind of cool curly. And then the same thing on the opposite side. Pinch and twist, and it's like this wave or this zigzag. Cool style. And that's how you do that.